Okay, so lithium. We've all heard this morning that the US is making a very concerted effort to accelerate the reshoring of critical minerals supply chains and reclaim competitiveness. So what does this mean for lithium? You've been hearing about it because it is becoming increasingly strategic for national security applications in AI data centers, advanced robotics, and military applications, including energy storage. And obviously, we've heard a lot about lithium in electric vehicles in the past too. We've got a great group of experts here to discuss this now. But one of the first things I want to ask, because you may be scratching your heads about this a little bit too if you don't follow the space as closely. When I think of ExxonMobil, Dan, I do not think of lithium. I think of oil and gas. So what is an oil and gas company actually doing in the lithium mining industry?
Well, it's a great question, Andrea, and the short answer is it's actually really close to our core when you think of the capabilities that it's going to take to produce lithium. So I go back to when we started our low-carbon solutions business a few years ago, and the idea was we need, as ExxonMobil, to produce the energy and the products the world needs, and we need to reduce emissions. We need to do both. And we want to do that by building on what we do really well in our core oil, gas, chemicals business. And so we picked 3 business lines: carbon capture and storage, hydrogen, and lithium, for that very reason. And so when you think of lithium and what we're doing in lithium, so what we're doing is direct lithium extraction from brines. And you think about the capabilities and the technology that is required to do that. It's actually really close to home for us in many ways. And so if you think of the geology skills, the exploration, the subsurface understanding, what it takes to go find the resource, the drilling and production to produce the brine. When you get into the direct lithium extraction itself, the chemical processing, the supply chain, the customers in the automotive value chain, when you put those things together, they're actually very close to home for us. And then overlaid on top, you've got the technical capabilities and our project execution. We looked at that and said, lithium and direct lithium extraction from brines is a business where we can contribute. And when you look at what the United States is trying to do with building a domestic supply chain for critical minerals, including lithium, with our position in the Smackover Formation, our work in Arkansas, it's a really good fit for us, and we think we have something to contribute.
Yeah, okay, well that does definitely make sense. I love the way also that you call them lithium wells as well, like an oil well. All right then, so we know that the deposits are there. We've heard about that this morning, but it is well understood, we've talked about this too, that projects take time. These boom-bust pricing cycles do not help. Permitting, capex overruns, financing, etc. There can be a lot of challenges and obstacles. On the stage, we do have a very successful lithium mining company. SQM is based in Chile and it has a large international arm. José Miguel, how do you overcome all these obstacles? What does it take to be successful like this in lithium?
Yeah, as SQM, we are working in this industry for the last 25 years, and then we have experience, we have people that know different kind of the process. And in the last 5 years, we're increasing the local production in Chile, finished product, battery grade, lithium carbonate and lithium hydroxide, 4 times, from 50,000 ton now 200,000 ton, and we expect to grow other 50% in the next 5 years. And we assume that this is part of our experience, a lot of people that work together. We have a big effort in R&D, how to adapt different kind of technology, not just only DLE, the classic DLE. We add other technology, we adapt other technology, and we test most of this in our own plants. And from this point of view, we try to combine a big amount of lithium production with high quality, plus a special effort in sustainability, how to reduce the use of raw material like water, like brine, and increase the yield all together at the same time. And then we're very proud about that, and we're very optimistic in how to grow using our experience for the last 25 years.
Yeah, and Sid, obviously, as Hatch, an engineering company, you've been very involved in a lot of these projects over the years. I mean, what are some of the lessons you've learned? What are the things you wouldn't do now that you may have done, that companies may have done in the past? What should we be looking at doing going forward that will help really speed up the creation of these supply chains?
Well, one of the, you hit it right. There's boom and bust has been part of the commodity cycle for a while. And when there's a boom, there's a lot of work for everyone, and usually in a very tight geographical space with multiple projects going on at the same time. But going back 3 to 4 years, the number one thing that we'd heard from clients was speed to market. So everything was schedule driven. And you can have, and in order to do that, you'll have to take risks, cut corners in certain areas, or push the problem down the road. What that invariably leads to are some sort of capex increases, or worst case, projects don't function and have to be rectified down the road, which can take a long time. But having appropriate and realistic expectations of what it takes to get these projects off the ground is a key requirement. And taking away some of the constraints that inhibit project execution will, of course, also rein in some of the cost creep. If a project's supposed to take 3 years, but it ends up taking 6 or 10 years because of permitting delays or social license issues or financing constraints, the costs just keep going up. So if some of those constraints are managed and at the very beginning, you could execute these projects fairly well, as long as everyone is starting at the same sort of realistic point.
Yeah, I noticed both of you nodding there. It sounds like you're familiar with some of these problems. Dan, ExxonMobil's starting with kind of a blank slate here. I mean, so far, what are the lessons you've learned, maybe some of the obstacles you've encountered?
Well, Andrea, I'll start with the resource, and we've learned a lot by looking at how things have evolved in the oil and gas space. So when we look at the resource, take the Smackover Formation, for example, the resource has been confirmed. We've completed our own appraisal drilling program. We've validated the resource. The USGS came out last year with a study validating the potential of the Smackover all the way from East Texas to Florida. But what we've learned in oil and gas, and this applies to lithium as well, is the potential of the resource is one thing. But economically and competitively developing that resource is something altogether different. And so that's going to take investment in technology, proving out brand new technology with direct lithium extraction. It's going to take the right fiscal approach, for example, royalties to landowners and getting all that lined out in the different jurisdictions. All of those things are necessary to prove competitiveness, because at the end of the day, even building out a US domestic supply chain for lithium means competing in a global market, which today has been dominated by China. And so being competitively producing, that's going to be a very significant challenge for the industry to develop. The other challenge, and what we're learning in building out that supply chain, is it needs to be the full supply chain. And so it is not enough to have production of critical minerals here in the US. You have to have the supply chain. So think of lithium going to the cathode active material step, to the gigafactory, to the battery storage or EV. All of those steps need to be built out in the US, and that's one of the things that we're learning. We have MOUs in place with customers, SK On, LG, helping to build that out. But that need for the full supply chain is something that's going to be really important if we're going to have this take off.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And you've all mentioned technology. I do want to get back to processing just after we sort of maybe fill in the gaps as well on what direct lithium extraction technology is and why it's so different, why it's so interesting. It's often viewed as that disruptor technology. I don't know who'd like to sort of explain what it is and why it's so important, why it's so different. Who'd like to?
Do you want to?
Sid?
Sure, yeah. So DLE, is a simple term, but it's actually quite complex. A series of different types of technologies. But at its essence, it extracts the lithium selectively from the brine. There's a number of ways of doing it. and a few technologies, a few companies have cracked the code, including in the West. And it's been under development for not just 3 years or 4 years. Companies, it's been in the public lexicon for a while, for about 4 years, but there's been companies who have been devoted to DLE for the last 10, 15 years. And it's an adjacency from what we've applied in mineral processing for the last 20, 30 years. So again, it's an extension to the lithium industry. And our view is that it is a disruptor, but like all technologies, we'll have to be patient with it. There will be some challenges along the way. There will be some, I wouldn't say failed startups, but longer startups. But that is essentially what you get when you're starting with a technology that is so groundbreaking like DLE. And the more we do, the more projects that we execute, the more we practice, the more we learn. Down the road, every project I'm confident the 20th project will be better than the first project, right? So and we're just at the beginning of where that is. I think the first DLE project in over 20, 25 years has just come online this year, and we expect a few more to come online in the short term.
Well, let me say, in the production of lithium, there are two main steps. The first one is how to achieve the concentrate lithium, lithium chloride or sulfate. And after that, how to refine the product. And you can use this DLE technology in both of part of the process. Many times we talk about, in the first part, how to take just the lithium element from the brine, but in the second part, we're using some topics about DLE now, and we are testing a lot of different kind of DLE. DLE is like a group of technologies. It's not just one technology, and then it depends of the quality of the brine or some consideration, production consideration, what is the best option for each project. We test more than 100 technology. We have 12 pilot that we're applying. And we learn about this technology. It's very nice technology. Of course, we need to give more time for this kind of technology, and it depends of each project how kind of this need to choose to be success.
Is it the sort of thing that you will have, which will be very project specific, or are you identifying, do you think of ultimately 2 or 3 types that will work across the board around the world? I don't know how. What your experiences are.
It's a bit of the brine in our case, and then probably at the short list we will combine 2 or 3 just to be sure that obtain a high yield with this combination in different steps of this specific part of the process.
Sure. Dan, what are ExxonMobil's experiences so far with?
Yeah, I think it's worth highlighting some of the tremendous benefits we see for DLE, especially when you think of the challenge of building out a U.S. supply chain. So first thing I would offer is, with what we're doing in the SPAC over, we're taking it directly from the brine all the way through to battery grade lithium carbonate to sell to customers. And so there's no refining step that's required. That's really important when you look at where nearly all the refining capacity in the world, which is in China, having the ability to do that in the US without that refining step is very important. Second point I would make is the cycle time. Taking it from the brine to the finished product, very fast cycle time relative to mining, relative to evaporation. And the third one is the environmental footprint. So if you think of the carbon intensity, much lower, 2/3 lower carbon intensity for DLE to produce the lithium versus hard rock mining, and then the land use, much lower land use versus opening up a new mine or an evaporation pond. So a number of different benefits, I think, lend themselves to the challenge of building this out in the US.
Yeah, and I think that processing part that we've all heard so much about seems to be kind of quite elusive as well, because we hear of so many challenges in the industry, delays to projects, long lead times, real technical difficulties. Sid, I mean, you've been involved in this sector for a long time. What are we getting wrong? Why can't the West get it right? And why is there such a gap?
I wouldn't say the West can't get it right. So, if you go back, let's say 15 years, and let's say talk about hard rock conversion plants, in China. They were very small. They were 1,000 tons, 2,000 ton lines, largely batch processes. And there was a company that built a plant in China, Galaxy Resources, constructed a plant that was 17,000 tons per year, fully continuous, at a time where everything was batch in China. And it was a Western design, Western executed project. And since that period, China has used that design and improved upon it and practiced over and over again. So the expertise does exist in the West. What we haven't done is executed a number of these projects. And we of course would like to. And as I mentioned on the DLE side, Aramet has started the project on DLE this year. It's going to take a while to ramp up. So again, the expertise exists in North America or even in Europe because it's adjacent to mineral processing or hydromet or pyramid technologies that we're all familiar with. What is missing in the West are the number of projects that we can execute and learn from. Doing one every 10 years doesn't really afford itself to continuous learning and improvement.
Jose Miguel, do you agree with that? Would you say that's behind the delays?
Yeah, the main market now is in Asia, but we assume that the world will move in another direction, and we invest to increase the local capacity. As you know, the main capacity to refine lithium outside Asia is in Chile. And we put a lot of money in CapEx to increase the production, to refine in lithium in Chile, thinking that the local market in the US and in Europe and other parts of the world will increase in the next years. It's part of our strategy, how to be prepared to be a good supplier in terms of the, as I said, quantity, quality, and also the sustainability of our product. We have a really good footprint in water, emissions, energy, and we are preparing how to increase this footprint in the next 5 years. Yeah? And we expect to reduce significantly the use of fresh water and the use of brine. And this is part of our commitment with the local communities that we talk very close to our facility in Salar de Atacama.
Okay. And Dan, just from Exxon's perspective, or from your perspective, your views so far, should we be trying to sort of de-risk the supply chain rather than completely decouple it from China? Because reducing that reliance that has existed for such a long time, is it possible to ever get there? I'm just curious as your views on that part of how the sector should work. Should we be de-risking rather than completely trying to decouple?
Well, I think it's a big challenge ahead of us to build out a domestic supply chain when so much of it is focused in China today. I think there are a couple things. One, I mentioned before, the criticality of having each step in the supply chain. You can't just focus on the mineral production. You've got to get the cathode, you've got to get the battery, et cetera. The newly formed National Energy Dominance Council, great first step in the right direction. The recent executive order on having agencies come back to Secretary Burgum with their views, polling industry, getting strategies on how we're going to do that. All that is a great first step, and it's going to be required. And the key is we're going to have a level playing field. We're years behind. We have to get started. We have the potential, and I think the resource is there. I think the potential is there. We have new technologies, but we're going to have a level playing field to compete at the end of the day in a very competitive global market controlled today by China.
And partnerships as well. I'm assuming that joint venture kind of partnership model is going to be equally important in all of this as well. You're nodding, Sid. You agree?
Yeah, I think SQM and Albemarle have been in the business for so long, and so there's partnerships on and expertise and knowledge and know-how that they bring along. As this industry sort of expands, you'll have formal partnerships between companies as they sort of come through, but also as people move around, the expertise that gets disseminated. It'll be informal partnerships across people who are entering the industry, but people who've been producing battery-grade lithium, battery-grade carbon or hydroxide, and know what it actually takes to not only produce the chemical from an operations standpoint, but also get it against from a project standpoint, learn from each other. And I'm sure, the likes of Exxon entering the oil and gas, from the oil and gas business entering lithium, will also help the lithium industry in some way, learn from or absorb the best of what oil and gas has to offer in the way we execute these projects.
Jose, Miguel, you're nodding there. Partnerships are there?
Yeah, for us, we are very open. I mean, we have interest to be a good partner with companies or different effort that can make here in the US or in Europe. We are an international supplier. We are a Chilean company, but we see the world. And we are very open to make this kind of partnership, to share our experience, and especially to increase the quality of all of the process. Yeah? The demand in the world of lithium is growing. That's a good news for us. And we expect to be at that good level to be a good supplier from like the last 25 years.
Oh, well, you never know. Maybe these two can get together and have a conversation about a partnership. Just for the last minute or so, I just wanted to touch on something that's obviously important for the sector, which is that China's considering a ban on an export of a series of technologies, including lithium processing and refining methods. This could include the use of DLE technology, which we know they're using a lot of. Do we need to panic, Sid? I know you were involved a lot at the beginning with these, with the development of these technologies. Should we be worried?
Hatch's view is no. We're confidently on the market, on the view that there's other technologies that are not dependent on China. Even for producing lithium chemicals, we have a vendor ecosystem from other hydromet applications that we can use for lithium. So if China were to ban exports of technology, our view is the expertise has always existed in the West. And all we're asking for is a chance to practice and get more projects off the ground.
Great. Okay, well, I think that's a nice positive note to leave on. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.